There are some days in cycling that you just can't fathom. And this was one of them on the Volta Catalunya. An amended course for stage 6. They trimmed off the high ground at the very end. And it meant that the sprinters had no fear. We expected it then to all come together in a predictable finale. It was anything but by the time we reached our destination. Well, a reasonably complex final 3 kilometres. But the last climb now being amended, it was going to be a real charge for that line. We came out of the blocks right at the beginning of the day, and a breakaway always was going to have a chance. However, the pace of everybody in the pack was something to behold. In fact, there was an early intermediate sprint, and it was Primož Roglič that took it ahead of Remco Evenepoel. That meant an extra second between them overall, expanded gap now out to 11 seconds. Well, the breakaway was about to be caught. There was one climb still to be had. The question was, who would go for it? With the breakaway caught, Bouchard decided he would have a little bit of a roll of the dice, but not to be. And then Marc Soler struck out, a man who was on exactly the same time overall in the top 5 with Mikel Landa, and he wanted more. Over the top of this peak there was a second intermediate sprint. Soler was on his own. Would anyone else be tempted to go? And it was Evenepoel himself. Away he went, and Roglič straight onto his back wheel. Well, they had one intermediate sprint, as we mentioned at the beginning of the day. There was another one still to come. Bonus seconds up for grabs. But could they push on and then duke it out in a sprint between the pair of them? That was the big question. Evenepoel's mind was just starting to shred a little bit. He was getting very, very upset with Roglič not giving him a turn. They wound in Marc Soler. Well, Soler, the possibility of him getting an intermediate sprint bonus second was also hanging over Mikel Landa and Bahrain, who were giving chase, and so the gap was never large. And then the arguments began. Evenepoel not happy that he was not being given a turn by Primož Roglič, and Bahrain's efforts to neutralise first of all Soler ultimately meant that this kick for the line was also doomed. They all came back together with 8.4 kilometres to go. We were wondering how this would pan out. The intermediate sprint was there. Suddenly Jumbo-Visma were lively once more. This was for Roglič, and Evenepoel responded, and with anger, and so much so he managed to cross the line. And the three amigos had been up the road earlier together were also those that duked it out for bonus seconds. Mikel Landa ceding a precious second to Marc Soler, who moved ahead of him into 4th in the overall classification. Honours even then as far as the intermediate bonus seconds are concerned, back to 10 seconds the gap. Sprint finish? Yes. Sprinter to have won so far on this race, Caden Groves. Unfortunately, technical for him very late on, last 3 kilometres, had to take the bike of Xandro Maurice. Would he get back? Indeed, when we started to light up for the sprint, well, he was certainly going to be in the frame. Ida Schelling was one of those that started the move for Bora Hansgrohe, trying to monster up the centre as well. Evenepoel himself was already engaged. Also having a dig here, Maxim van Hils for Lotto Destiny, and then throwing out the line to beat Kokar. Guess who? Caden Groves. Talk about keeping your cool in adversity. This day had it all. There were stories aplenty at every turn of the page throughout. It was simply remarkable. Groves ahead of Kokar on the line. What a run. Bunch sprint on somebody else's bike? Are you kidding? No. Groves, Kokar, Schelling, Van Hils, Evenepoel, still using his anger. Kron, Godon and Roglič safely inside the top 10. No gap at the end between he and Evenepoel, meaning that it's 10 seconds in the general classification, as you were, both having finished in front of the other as far as the intermediates are concerned. So one day still to go, Barcelona, and of course the mighty climb that we love so much about this place. A dive down into town. The laps come relentlessly, one after the other. And then finally, we have some respite. Montjuïc awaits. Let the laps begin. Let us find our champion in this amazing race. You cannot beat Catalunya for drama. Make sure you catch up with how it finishes tomorrow.